What are we celebrating?
Roar!
World Lion Day. That's today.
I thought that was my cue.
Well, I didn't know if you were. It was a bear, but yeah, it was.
Arr.
Lions play a really important role in their environments. They are top predators, right? Helping to keep a healthy balance of numbers in other animal species like zebra and wildebeest.
They hunt mostly at night to have an advantage over their prey. And here's a cool tidbit. They hunt during storms. The noise and wind make it harder for prey to see and hear them. Nearly all wild lions live in Africa, except for a small population that lives in India.
Yeah, but we know life isn't all that easy for the big cats. As we see in today's Facts Are Facts, you go back 100 years ago, there were more than 200,000 wild lions in Africa. Today, just 20,000 overall. Lion populations have decreased by 40% in just 3 generations.
Now, they face a lot of threats, including poaching and hunting, habitat loss as human settlements expand into their domain, and a lack of food because of extreme weather.
David Mizejewski is a naturalist at the National Wildlife Federation, joining us now to talk about how we can help protect lion populations. We really appreciate you being with us. So when we look at the decline of lions in their populations already being hindered, does that hurt the ecosystem that they're living in altogether?
Absolutely. I mean, lions are what we call keystone predators. That means they're sort of at the top of the food web, and they exert an enormous influence over all the other species that share that ecosystem. And so when things like habitat destruction happen and climate change, as you know, we're hearing, constantly, is destabilizing weather patterns, and that's causing droughts and flooding and wildfires. These things all are impacting lions, and then there's a ripple effect. As the lion population goes down, that's impacting their prey species and everything else that's connected.
Wow.
So we mentioned a few of the threats, and you just talked a little bit about that are facing the lions, but one of the big threats is coming from humans. Can you explain why that is such a threat?
Well, most of these problems that lions are facing are caused by humans. So again, whether it's habitat destruction, encroachment of our cities and towns by human communities, conflicts with wildlife, these are all really kind of connected back to humans and honestly the well-being of humans. People who are struggling, oftentimes, they end up impacting nature. And so, climate change is impacting these lions because, again, it's causing these droughts that are causing declines in their prey species. Water resources are disappearing in their habitat in Africa. And so it even is speculated that male lions could actually lose their manes in the future because of the impacts of climate change and increasing temperatures. And that's kind of a crazy impact, but it's just an example of like how climate change is really having surprising impacts that we might not even have thought about.
I didn't realize that. So their manes, obviously, we see them in the male species. Is it there to provide warmth for them? I didn't really understand that. And you were saying if it gets too warm, they'll lose that. Is that the correlation there?
Yeah, actually, the manes have nothing to do with warmth. What the manes in a male lion really are a communication system with other male lions. And male lions that have thicker and darker manes are sort of viewed, it's kind of a signal for their physical health and well-being. And male lions compete with each other for mating rights, and it can get pretty brutal. So when male lions are young, they, and they leave their birth pride, and they seek to find another pride to kind of take over so that they can, reproduce and mate with the females of that pride. And they have to battle other males to do that. And again, this sort of signal of the health of the mane is really how they're kind of determining whether or not, this is a lion I want to take on because I feel like I can beat him, or maybe I'm going to back down. And so, there's speculation that if we see lions in the future, because of the increased heat, male lions not surviving because of the manes, because they get actually overheated, it'll be a really interesting sort of, fallout and how that will impact lion reproductive health. It's all a big question.
Right. Wow.
The lion's like, you see this mane, bro? You don't want to take me on.
Exactly.
You see this mane?
Yeah. Eyeing them up.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so cool. That's such an interesting tidbit. We got to talk a little bit more about the impact of climate change, though, because the lions already live in a pretty harsh climate anyways. So how is climate change making this even worse?
Well, again, it's causing that destabilization of weather patterns that we were just talking about. And so again, that could be increasing temperatures, which just heat stress alone could be deadly, not only for lions, but for their prey as well. It and their prey species, they can't survive without them. And it could also cause the drying up of water resources. And as you mentioned, lions live African lions pretty much universally in very hot environments. They're mostly found in sort of savanna open grassland ecosystems, which are generally arid, at least for a big part of the year. But there are populations that actually live in deserts. And so when climate change is causing droughts and the drying up of these crucial water resources, that could spell doom for lions either directly or because their prey disappears and then they starve. So it's this ripple effect that happens, and
Right.
it kind of goes through the whole ecosystem.
So when we hear about stories like this, we do a lot of stories on how the climate is impacting different animal populations, whatever species that is. Do we just sit back and be like, man, I hope they can work this out and we'll see them in the future? Or are there things we can do to keep them around?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I really want to emphasize, the message of the National Wildlife Federation and most conservation organizations are that there's still time, but we have to act now. We have to use our voices. And, for folks in the US that are watching this and thinking, well, what can I do to help lions? There's a lot you can do. Use your voice, support organizations that are working on climate change solutions. Sometimes you got to get political and support, candidates and parties that are actually committed to doing something about that, because we can make an impact here. We in the US are a big contributor to global climate change in terms of carbon pollution. So, you can make personal choices, but really, if we're going to see the systemic change that's necessary to save lions and people too, because people are being impacted everywhere around the globe, including right here in the US. So, there's a lot that we can do, and there is hope, but we got to get active now.
Yeah, so true. David Mizejewski, naturalist at the National Wildlife Federation. Thanks so much for joining us and for those all those tidbits here on World
Awareness
Lion Day.
is key.
Yeah.